You guys remember Boogaloo, the Boogaloo Boys? Back when a couple of officers were gunned down, and the two like crazy dudes, the dude who thought he was in like a horror movie, he wrote words in blood on his truck, and like they were running around the U.S. like going to protest and trying to like rabble rouse and they shot two officers dead because they were trying to start a massive race war. So that's what they did. And recently the Boogaloo Boys teamed up. The Boogaloo Boys and Black Lives Matter, like a Power Ranger, teamed up for good, and they used the power of the people to obliterate the police state. So we can take a look at this. Today, armed Black Lives Matter and Boogaloo protesters joined forces for an open carry rally against police violence and government overreach. And so you can see a couple pictures here for what they were doing. These are these guys. As you can see, the man with the Boogaloo mask is the Boogaloo Boy. He is the Boogaloo Boy. You can see his American Ultra Boost and his Guy Fieri merch t-shirt under his bulletproof vest, which is probably not bulletproof, and a bunch of Black Lives Matter protesters as well. You can see here he's wearing an I Can't Breathe shirt. His name was Duncan Lemp. Her name was Breonna Taylor. So teaming up for good. Look, they're holding hands. They're friends. Normalize men holding hands. Look, they're holding hands. They're speaking together. They're holding weapons in the air. What's more American than this? We even got women out here. And we didn't even believe that women existed. And here is one, standing proud with her Boogaloo friendos, together at last. This man has, I am keeping this image. This is mine. This is mine. That I'm keeping that. That's, I'm not going to lie, that's actually pretty sick. See, he didn't want to get a gun because he knew if something went down, they do exist. It's crazy. He didn't want to use a gun because he knew if something went down that he'd be more dangerous. He'd be more dangerous with the sword. While you guys were doing riots, he was studying the blade. So they came together and did a riot. Here's recently, okay. There were a couple people who were trying to rabble rouse. Okay, here's one instance here.
Tell us that we can't do what we want, that we can't defend ourselves. How many racists do I see here? Anybody a racist?
Oh no, oh no. Anybody a racist in these two? Like goofs. They put their hands up. Me. And then is that Spencer? It is not Richard Spencer. It's a guy. I'm pretty sure his name is Mike Dunn. This is at the beginning of the rally when they all started to come together, and the speaker for the Boogaloo, the leader for the Boogaloo rally, the guy who organized the Boogaloo rally, he was speaking and he's like, "We're not racist. Do I see racists here?" And then these two clowns raised their hand, and then there was like a tiny little kerfuffle. I think. Where is it? Here it is.
Yeah, people.
Hey Trekkie, how you doing, my friendo, my comrade? It's so nice to hear your voice. So there were actually some rabble rousers, but what I thought was really amazing is that they saw the danger. Okay, people were fighting, people were getting upset, and when you have so many people upset with such a high tension situation and everyone has a gun, you don't want to have like a a classic Wild West shootout go on in between these people. Okay. So they were actually able to make up. They're actually able to make up. And what they did after that is that the police came and the police were trying to move them, and they had absolutely none of it. I'm doing well too. I see you're uploading more on YouTube and I like it. I would like to see you do a little bit more edited content, but I'm liking your I try to pop in on everyone I can. After that, what they did was Mike Dunn started to speak again. He started to speak again.
For you
guys. If you will listen up for a second, I'm going to explain what happened just a second ago so everybody understands what's going on. I've got John Mark here with me as well. You had some gentlemen, and I'm telling you who they were because we got it on video, but some gentlemen in some white coats and a fedora. They were asked if they were racist. They raised their hand previously and thought it was a joke, and then they were Heil Hitler and then goose stepping. That was the issue we had. So we couldn't. So I named it for you guys. I understand 100% that I probably lost some of your respect. I understand that. But at the same time, when we saw that happening, man, I'm not for that, and I don't think many of you are. But you got to understand our perspective. We saw that happen. We can't do that. So I do apologize for the way it went down.
So later in the clip, someone they said we don't do Nazi shit. So they don't take too kindly to the far right in this Boogaloo. You can't edit for shit. Let's talk about Boogaloo for a second, okay? Boogaloo. I explained in my other video referring to the Boogalo boys when they came out, when that section of the Boogalo boys were going over, shot those police officers, and people were trying to blame it on Black Lives Matter and the other people from Boogaloo who tried to incite race war. There is a very large contingency of people in Boogaloo who do want to start a race war. This is very true. They're bad actors. They'll try to infiltrate leftist movements and try to rabble-rouse to create tension, to create negative media coverage, to exacerbate problems. They're accelerationists. They're trying to make sure that the race war and the destruction of the United States as we see it comes as fast as possible. These people exist. But it's a very diverse movement, okay? But one thing they always come to grips on, okay? One thing they always come together on is anti-authoritarianism and anti-government sentiments, all right? And honestly, that's something as we on the left, we could get behind. I can get behind anti-authoritarianism. I can get behind a lot of the government out of people's lives. I can get behind that. I really can. You aspire to be a race and class trader? Thank you. Same here. Same here, my sibling, my comrade in arms. The other week we talked about Rising with Crystal and Sagar and why I don't like Rising anymore and how they're perpetuating the idea that there's a strong left and right populist movement that we can work on actual solutions with on the right. We can't and we don't. Just spoilers. All right. I'm gonna say spoilers after I actually talk about what the actual problem is. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Ooh, wow, you're one step closer to mod. Keep it up. Keep up the great work. These people are putting out a very, very fake idea of what's real. This is the most real sort of description of left and right that people can actually get behind. That I can see. This is the closest thing we can get to. This is absolutely the closest thing we can get to. And actually a couple of organizers, and here's what they have to say about them linking up and why Boogaloo and BLM linked up for this specific occasion.
Come here a second. Hey, this my brother here. I'm disappointed in the fact that this man is profiled. Yeah, you heard me, and I'm being clear about that. I'm disappointed in the fact that gun owners are profiled as well, and you can clap for all of that. I don't care what you think. You know it's true. You know what I've come to notice? I've come to notice that a lot of people who truly love America, we fly something. It's called the American flag, and we represent that American flag. And I serve for that American flag, and many of you serve for the same. Hell yeah!
So
I'm disappointed in the.
That's one thing that they can link on, right? Is profiling, government overreach. That's an actual goal to like tamp back government overreach. That's a pretty big thing with things like the Patriot Act being pushed, lots of expansions of the police state, expansions of the surveillance state into normal everyday people's lives that absolutely should not fly. This is definitely something that they can get under. Racial profiling. To them, that's what they see. That's what they see as massive government overreach and an infringement on normal human beings' lives, because they can draw an easy parallel between how people see minorities and then discriminate against them, and see how people can discriminate against gun owners, and then profile gun owners and then discriminate against them. Okay, and that's one great thing that I think that they can get behind. That's what I don't understand about so many people who will be like minorities or something, and then will like crap on like non-binary people, gay people, trans people. Like, what are you doing? Are you stupid, dumb, or stupid? It has to be one of the two. It has to be one of the three, because there has to be something wrong here for you to actually think that you, as a minority in this country, as a marginalized person, can sit here and you think you can marginalize from your marginalized position and think that it's going to be okay and it's not going to come back and hurt you. Okay. That's one thing that they can actually link on. That's a solution. That's a solution. Okay. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. All right. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Here's Boogalo and Black Lives Matter protesters talking to each other over things that they find about Boogalo explaining, someone from Boogalo explaining their ideology to one of the Black Lives Matter protesters.
Individual human rights. The Boogalo movement. So it's awesome. It's a Canadian arts package. The Hawaiian shirts, all that fun shit.
Okay, what is that?
Gorgeous. We're basically like a libertarian movement. We support
For people who find it a little bit hard to hear, he's saying it's a libertarian movement.
Basic individual human rights for all
Who support basic individual human rights for all people.
So basically, like lower taxes, if not abolish it altogether.
He said, so he wants lower taxes, if not abolish taxes.
All gun laws are infringements.
All gun laws are infringement. All gun laws are infringements.
Basically get the government out of healthcare, especially when it involves like abortion and stuff. I mean, everybody here has a different opinion on that, but we all agree that the government should not be involved in it.
Get the government out of healthcare, including abortion. Okay, so he stated a couple goals there that I can actually really get behind. Things that he wants to do, you know, get the government out of people's out of lots of people's personal lives. But let's not fool ourselves to think that these people are 100% on our side. Okay. Libertarians and anarchists. That's super cool. The Boog is like, they're kind of a mess. They're crazy. They're everywhere. Okay. Back on track though. Let's not fool ourselves to think that they're 100% on our side. Okay. What he said there specifically about healthcare, I'll zero in on that for a second. Get the government out of healthcare. That's what people on the left say. That's a really big thing. Get the government out of healthcare. Get the government hands off of, you know, women's right to choose, or people who are having babies' right to choose whether or not they can keep the baby. That's a really big thing. Freedom of choice there. Get the government out of healthcare. Where have you heard that before? Outside of the left. The right uses it too. It's a very fun right-wing talking point. Get the government out of healthcare. The government messes everything up. We want to get the government out of healthcare. Is this person going to work with us with Medicare for all? I don't think so. Is this person going to push for at the very least, rad progressive? Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Is this person going to work with us on, hey bud, I completely lost my train of thought. No, it's gone. It's off the rails like the freaking Polar Express, slipping and sliding on ice. I can't find it. Where's the tracks? No, it's okay. Is this person going to work? This person probably isn't going to work with us on getting, at the very least, a public option through, because they are fundamentally against government involvement in these sorts of things. That's not very helpful. The government is a tool. Just like a gun, the government is a tool. The problem is, to the Boogalo boys, they only have hammers. And when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. All right? You can't attack the same problems from the same exact point of view. Getting government out of people's lives as a blanket statement, pretty cool. You can't apply it to literally everything. The government has to be involved in some things for a functioning society to work. Okay. I think that we should have at least a public option that people could choose to get on 100% free at the point of service, that people can make sure that the people can make sure that they have an ability to get healthcare when they need it. Okay. They wouldn't be for that. Some of the people in the Boogalo boys at this very rally would be against Title VII would be against Title VII in the Civil Rights Act. And if you remember, Title VII is what the Supreme Court labeled as sex, so sexual orientation, sexual identity, that as well. Government good, state bad, yeah. They'd be against something like Title VII that would make sure that business owners have to serve protected classes. That's something that they'd actually be against. Some of them maybe not, but I'd argue that if you took a poll of people in Boogalo, they'd 100% go with, well, if they haven't put any thought into it, they'd go, well, we're against the government in people's lives, and that's the government in people's lives, so we should make sure that that doesn't happen, so I'm going to say I'm against it. That's not very good. These people can help us in very specific ways. These people can aid and abet left-wing movements in the points that we agree. These are actual solutions that we can agree on. Other ones, not so much. Let's go to a couple of Boogalo boys explaining their ideology. Yeah, veterans, they're pretty based, not gonna lie. The reporter here said, I talked to a few Boog guys hanging out after the event, and what common ground they see with BLM. Anti-authoritarianism is one that he said. Another one tries to vilify the media and the way they represent their views. Let's take a look.
They all hate Ralph Northam.
If you didn't hear him, he said, well, they all hate Ralph Northam. And mind you, this is in Richmond, Virginia. This is where this rally was being held. So Ralph Northam is the governor. And they're like, these guys hate Ralph Northam. We hate Ralph Northam. They're good with us.
Anti-authoritarianism is a broad spectrum, and a lot of people can fall under that.
I think what he said is extremely true. Lots of people can fall under anti-authoritarianism, all right? And lots of people can have very different views when it comes to anti-authoritarianism. This is important to keep in mind, because just because they're anti-authoritarian does not mean they're left. Does not mean they're a sock dem, does not mean they're a dem sock, does not mean they're a socialist, does not mean they're an anarchist. That's not what that means, okay? That just means they're anti-authoritarian. We can get a couple things. We can roll back the ability that the NSA has to spy on American citizens and abroad. That's one thing that we can work on these guys with. They're 100% for that. We can get the government out of abortion. That's great. These things are something that we can work on, but we should not fool ourselves and lie ourselves into the opinion that these guys are on our side at any point in time. I mean, on some things, sure, I think I could, but I think it's important to keep some contingencies of other movements in our back pocket when we can use them to be efficacious for our movement.
And it's really easy for the media to try and vilify us because we're essentially a great ally. And it's easy to call us racist, homophobes.
They're just driving a wedge between us. Yeah. We're very close.
And even a lot of the very liberal types that I'm familiar with from up north, even they understand that we're all on the same side. Because it isn't black versus white, right versus left. It's just the state versus us.
So if you heard the last thing that he said, he's like, even lots of my friends up north see that it's not right versus left, white versus black, it's state versus us. And it's a very interesting take, but to hinge your ideology on that is basically class reductionism. And I feel like a lot of these people, when questioned about ideas on things like intersectionality, institutional racism, are either woefully uneducated or don't care too much about it. And that's a problem, all right? And that's not saying that these guys are bad people. They have their own political agenda. I mean, Godspeed, Chief. But we need to understand that we can work with these guys on some things, but on a lot of things we absolutely can't. Don't lull yourself into believing that there's some like massive working class left and right a Boogalo BLM sort of a thing that we can work on like almost every issue on. There are very specific issues and very specific things that we can, and we need to take it. We need to take yes for an answer sometimes. We need to fight back on things that we absolutely cannot work on. Strategic alliances are incredibly important for political efficaciousness. And I feel like the left, for a lot of times we're not very good at political efficaciousness. And I think that this is one thing that we can definitely work